Peace to the family. ETM Hotel Rennie Shawn. Welcome in peace. My name is Shawn. I'd like to thank everybody for tuning in today to our live show. We're about to get it cracking, man. We're about to get it cracking. And I'd like to thank everybody who may watch this afterwards for watching it. So let me get this muted here. Kofi, you got something you want to say, man, before we get going?
Nothing but black African power, family. I want to say ETM Hotel, Dua Aku, Fatma Walafi, Fatma Iwa Pele, Majuba Iba Igungun, Majuba Iba Alakba, Igun Kiki Igungun. I always want to give honor and praises to the ancestors because, again, without the ancestors, we wouldn't be here. That's it, man. Appreciate y'all for tuning in to the Mossi Warrior Clan channel. Appreciate the support.
All right, my brother. I know you were talking to Voss a minute ago, man. What are you doing?
Nothing. I'm gonna see if he gonna get involved in the next show.
Okay, all right. So yeah, let's go ahead and get it cracking, man. I'm gonna go ahead and share my screen. We'll get right into it. We're gonna try to do 2 shows today, guys. So we're gonna go get through this one, and then after this one, we're gonna, you'll see what we got in store for you on the next one. So for everybody tuning in, please like the show, share the show, tell a friend, tell a friend. I know we kind of starting a little earlier than normal, and got a lot of people off balance. So hopefully we get some views, some viewers tuned in, and people appreciate the content. All right, cover my screen share. You can see my screen? All right. I see it. You ain't got to unmute.
No, nah.
Lord, it's so hard living this life, a constant struggle each and every day. Some wonder why I'd rather die than to continue living this way. Many are blind and cannot find the truth, 'cause no one seems to really know. But I won't accept that this is how it's gonna be. Therefore, you got to let me and my people go. 'Cause I wanna be free, completely free. Lord, won't you please come and save me? I wanna be free, totally free. I'm not gonna
Excuse me, I double clicked too soon. All right, let's go ahead and get it cracking, man. Patrice Lumumba, born July 2nd, 1925, in the village of Onalua in Kasai province in Belgian Congo. He was a member of the small Batatela ethnic group, a fact that became significant in his later political life. His two principal rivals, Moise Chambe, who led the breakaway of the Katanga province, and Joseph Kasavubu, who later became the Congo's president, both came from large, powerful ethnic groups from which they derived their major support, giving their political movements a regional character. In contrast, Lumumba's movement emphasized its all Congolese nature. After attending a Protestant mission school, Lumumba went to work in Kindu Port Impen, where he became active in the club of Evoles, Western educated Africans. So that's what they called them, Evolus, if I'm pronouncing it correctly. He began to write essays and poems for Congolese journals. He also applied for and received full Belgian citizenship. Lumumba next moved to Leopoldville, now Kinshasa, to become a postal clerk and went on to become an accountant in the post office in Stanleyville, now Kisangani. There he continued to contribute to the Congolese press. In 1955, Lumumba became regional president of purely Congolese trade union of government employees that was not affiliated, as were other unions, to either of the two Belgian trade union federations, Socialist and Roman Catholic. He also became active in the Belgian Liberal Party in the Congo. Although conservatives in many ways, the party was not linked to either of the trade union federations, which were hostile to it. In 1956, Lumumba was invited with others on a study tour of Belgium under the auspices of the Minister of Colonies. On his return, he was arrested on the charge of embezzlement from the post office. He was convicted and condemned 1 year later. After various reductions of the sentence to 12 months imprisonment and a fine, when Lumumba got out of prison, he grew even more active in politics. In October 1958, he, along with other Congolese leaders, launched the Congolese National Movement, which is the Movimento National Congolese, MNC, the first nationwide Congolese political party. In December, he attended the first All-African People's Conference in Accra, Ghana, where he met nationalists from across the African continent and was made a member of the permanent organization set up by the conference. His outlook and vocabulary, inspired by Pan-African goals, now took on the tenure of militant nationalism. The first and only elected Prime Minister of the Congo sits before you, Patrice Lumumba.
L'indépendance du Congo constitue l'aboutissement de l'œuvre conçue par le génie du roi Léopold II, entreprise par lui avec un courage tenace et continuée avec persévérance par la Belgique. Elle marque une heure décisive dans les destinées, non seulement du Congo lui-même, mais je n'hésite pas à l'affirmer, de l'Afrique tout entière.
Il va dire ce qu'il ne faut pas dire.
Combattants de l'indépendance, aujourd'hui victorieux, je vous salue au nom du gouvernement congolais. À vous tous, mes amis, qui avez lutté sans relâche à nos côtés, je vous demande de faire de ce 30 juillet 1960 une date illustre que vous garderez ineffaçablement gravée dans vos cœurs, une date dont vous enseignerez avec fierté la signification à vos enfants, pour que ceux-ci, à leur tour, fassent connaître à leurs fils et à leurs petits-fils l'histoire glorieuse de notre lutte pour la liberté. Nous avons connu les ironies, les insultes, les coups que nous devions subir matin idée et soif parce que nous étions ténèbres. Tu oublieras qu'à un noir, on disait tu, non certes comme à un ami, mais parce que les voix honorables étaient réservées pour seul blanc. Nous vous le disons, tout cela est désormais fini.
This is the speech at the ceremony of the proclamation of the Congo's independence on June 30th, 1960. This is what he said in his words that sparked an outrage by the Belgian. As you can see, they were kind of furious about what he was saying. So it says, men and women of the Congo, victorious independence fighters, I salute you in the name of the Congolese government. I ask all of you, my friends, who tirelessly fought in our ranks to mark this June 30th, 1960 as an illustrious date that will be ever engraved in your hearts, a date whose meaning you will proudly explain to your children so that they in turn might relate to their grandchildren and great-grandchildren the glorious history of our struggle for freedom. Although this independence of the Congo is being proclaimed today by agreement with Belgium, an remarkable country with which we are on equal terms, no Congolese will ever forget that independence was won in struggle, a preserving and inspired struggle carried on from day to day, a struggle in which we were undaunted by privation of suffering and stinted neither strength nor blood. It was filled with tears, fire, and blood. We are deeply proud of our struggle because it was just a noble and indispensable in putting an end to the humiliating bondage forced upon us. That was our lot for the 80 years of colonial rule, and our wounds are too fresh and much too painful to be forgotten. We have experienced forced labor in exchange for pay that did not allow us to satisfy our hunger, to clothe ourselves, to have decent lodging, or to bring up our children as dearly loved ones. He continues, morning, noon, and night, we were subjected to jeers, insults, and blows because we were Negroes. Who will ever forget that blacks was addressed as two, not because he was a friend, but because the polite vice was reserved for the white man. We have seen our land seized in the name of ostensibly just laws, which gave recognition only to the right of might. We have not forgotten the law was never the same for the white and the black, that it was lenient to the ones and cruel and humane to the others. We have experienced the atrocious sufferings, being persecuted for political conviction and religious beliefs and exiled from our native land. Our lot was worse than death itself. We have not forgotten that in the cities, the mansions were the whites and the tumble-down huts for the blacks, that a black was not admitted to the cinemas, restaurants, and shops set aside for Europeans, that a black traveled in the holes under the feet of the whites in their luxury cabins. Who will ever forget the shootings which killed so many of our brothers, or the cells into which were mercilessly thrown those who no longer wished to submit to the regime of injustice, oppression, and exploitation used by the colonialists as a tool of their domination? All that, my brothers, brought us untold suffering. But we, who were elected by the votes of your representatives and representatives of the people to guide our native land, we who have suffered in body and soul from the colonial oppression, we tell you that henceforth all that is finished with. The Republic of the Congo has been proclaimed, and our beloved country's future is now in the hands of its own people. Brothers, let us commence together a new struggle, a sublime struggle that will lead our country to peace, prosperity, and greatness. Together we shall establish social justice and ensure for every man a fair remuneration for his labor. We shall show the world that what the black man can do when working in liberty, and we shall make the Congo the pride of Africa. We shall see to it that the lands of our native country truly benefit its children. We shall revise old laws and make them into new ones that will be just and noble. We shall stop the persecution of free thought. We shall see to it that all citizens enjoy the fullest extent of basic freedoms provided for by the Declaration of Human Rights. We shall eradicate all discrimination, whatever its origin, and we shall ensure for everyone a station in life befitting his human dignity and worthy of his labor and his loyalty to the country. We shall institute the country of peace resting not on guns and bayonets, but on a concord and goodwill. And in all this, my dear compatriots, we can rely not only on our own enormous forces and immense wealth, but also on the assistance of the numerous foreign states, whose cooperation we shall accept when it is not aimed at imposing upon us an alien policy, but is given in a spirit of friendship. Even Belgium, which has finally learned the lesson of history and need no longer try to oppose our independence, is prepared to give us its aid and friendship. For that end of an agreement has just been signed between our two equal and independent countries. I am sure that this cooperation will benefit both countries. For our part, we shall, while remaining vigilant, try to observe the engagements we have freely made. Thus, both in internal and external spheres, the new Congo being created by my government will be rich, free, and prosperous. But to attain our goal without delay, I ask all of you, legislators and citizens of Congo, to give us all the help you can. I ask you all to sink your tribal quarrels. They weaken us and make cause of us to be despised abroad. Excuse me. I ask you all not to shrink from any sacrifice for the sake of ensuring the success of our grand undertaking. Finally, I ask you unconditionally to respect the life and property of fellow citizens and foreigners who have settled in our country. If the conduct of these foreigners leaves much to be desired, our justice will promptly expel them from the territory of the Republic. If, on the contrary, their conduct is good, they must be left in peace, for they too are working for our country's prosperity. The Congo's independence is a decisive step towards the liberation of the whole African continent. Our government, a government of national and popular unity, will serve its country. I call on all Congolese citizens, men, women, and children, to set themselves resolutely to the task of creating a national economy and ensuring our economy independence, and tender glory to the fighters for national liberation. Long live independence and African unity. Long live the independent and sovereign Congo. During World War II, a Brookings Institute study challenged the then influential geopolitical argument that whoever controlled the great land masses of Eurasia and Africa, where adjacent islands called the World Islands would control the seas and thus the world. This argument had been developed by, among others, the English geographer Halford Mackinder, had been discussed by Adolf Hitler in Mein Kampf, and was understood by the Brookings authors as having influenced Hitler's campaign in World War II. The authors of the Brookings report argued that minerals, not land masses, were the key to world control. The geopolitical thesis of the present book is that potential world control is not necessarily afforded by control of any of the great land masses, but that it lies in control of mineral resources wherever they are backed up by the control of the land and the sea. It further emphasizes the fact that the combined mineral resources controlled by the United States and the British Empire far outweigh the mineral resources of the world islands as envisaged in the German geopolitical concept, and afford a much broader and more powerful base for world control, both for peace and war. Outside Russia, the Brookings study demonstrated Africa was the most important and often the only source for West of increasingly significant strategic minerals, defined as minerals that would be needed to supply the military, industrial, and essential civil needs of the United States during a national emergency. Such strategic minerals included chromite. Africa had nearly 100% of the world's reserve. Cobalt, more than 50%, of magnesium, more than 75%, and platinum, 73%. Africa also supplied other minerals needed for war production, including copper, bauxite, zinc, vanadium, antimony, beryllium, graphite, mica, talc, fluorspar, uranium, and industrial diamonds, as well as the world's largest supplies of gold. Within Africa, one of the richest sources of minerals was the Belgian Congo, And just as the Portuguese has been drawn to that area's wealth in the mid-15th century and Henry Morton Stanley in the mid-19th century, so too was the United States in the mid-20th century, concerned that the mineral resources of the Congo Basin, so important for control of the world, not fall into the hands of the Russians through the person assumed to be their puppet, Patrice Lumumba. Belgium pulled out of the Congo in 1960. Moving in the course of a few months from a claim that it would continue to rule the country for the foreseeable future to complete abandonment of its former prized possession. Growing demonstrations and the refusal of the vocal population to accept the Belgians' attempt to identify as collaborationist group propelled the colonialists out of the country, but not before they had attempted to secure their economic interests in the mineral-rich southeastern province of Katanga. Belgium and South African investors encouraged regional leader of Katanga, Mossi, to organize a secessionist movement. At the same time, the Congo became swept up in the Cold War as Russians and U.S. diplomats competed to incorporate this potentially rich and strategically situated country into their respective spheres of influence. Patrice Lumumba was caught up in these contradictory forces. He had led the movement for independence and became the first president of independent Congo. Perceived as anti-Belgian by the Belgians, as pro-socialist by South African businessmen who feared nationalization of their Katanga mining companies, as pro-communist by the United States, and as too intransigent in his opposition to Katanga cessions by the leaders of the United Nations. Lumumba became increasingly isolated internationally and viewed by Americans as potentially dangerous enemy in independent Africa. According to a sworn testimony by CIA agents to a congressional committee, the director of the CIA from 1953 to 1961, Alan Dulles, under orders from President Eisenhower, plotted Lumumba's assassination. The cables and testimony reproduced below come from a congressional investigation organized by Senator Frank Church in 1975 that investigated converted operations and assassination attempts on foreign leaders undertaken by the United States during the presidencies of Eisenhower, Kennedy, and Nixon. The Office of the Historian Historical Document. What I'm about to read from again is an Office of the Historian Historical Document. On August 18th, 1960, the National Security Council discussed Congolese Prime Minister Lumumba's threat to force the United Nations out of the Congo, saying that this would be a disaster. The United States should do everything it could prevent. Under Secretary of State Douglas Dillon warned that the Soviet Union might be invited to intervene in the Congo after the United Nations was forced out. Director of Central Intelligence Alan Dulles noted that Lumumba was a Soviet pet. President Eisenhower said that the possibility that the United Nations will be forced out was simply inconceivable and declared that the United States should keep the United Nations in the Congo, even if it had to ask for European troops or if such actions was used by the Soviets to start a fight. Dillon said that the Department of State agreed, but noted that both doubted whether the United Nations could stay if the Congolese government were opposed. For a full record of the NSC discussion of the Congo, see Foreign Relations, 1958 to 1960, Volume 14, Africa, Document 180. That's the primary. Here's what it looked like. Now, below in red, I left you a link for anyone interested. You can pause the video, take a screenshot. I'm going to leave it up just for a second so you can see the website in red that will give you the official documents of alleged assassination plots involving foreign leaders. Cable sent between the CIA agents in the Congo and CIA headquarters in Washington, D.C., August-September 1960. We're going to review these cables that were sent between because these are communication plays. CIA cable number 1, Leopold Station, Office Victor, Hedgeman to Director Alan Dulles, August 18th, 1960. That's August 18th. August 26th, CIA cable Director Dulles to Leopold Station, Office Hedgeman, August 26, 1960. You had a cable that was sent from Leopold Station to Office Hedgeman to Director Doles in September the 7th, 1960. Then you had another cable that came from Doles to Hedgeman in September 13th from 1960. This is showing a pattern of communication in August, the 2 days in August and the 2 days in September. We're going to continue with the cables. This is CIA cable from Basel tweeted to Leopold Station Office Hedgeman, September 19th, 1960. And then another cable from tweeted to Leopold Station and Hedgeman from September 22nd of 1960. And then another one on the 24th in 1960 from Dole's Leopold Station Office at Hedgeman. So there's plenty of communication going on with these wires. Here's CIA cable number 1. Now, I summed them up earlier, but if I need to go back to them, I can. So remember, we had a CIA cable that was set up in August, like the 19th of August. Here's what that cable communication was. Embassy and station believe Condor experienced classic communist effort takeover government. Many forces at work here, Soviets, Communist Party, etc. Although difficult to determine major influencing factors to predict outcomes, struggle for power, decisive period not far off. Whether or not Lumumba actually a commie or just playing commie game to assist his solidifying power, anti-West forces rapidly increasing power, Congo, and there may be little time left in which to take action to avoid another Cuba. CIA cable wire 2. In high quarters, here it is clear-cut conclusion that if Lumumba continues to hold high office, the inevitable result will be, at best be chaos, and at worst pave the way to communist takeover the Congo with disastrous consequences for the prestige of the Union and for the interests of free world generally. Consequently, we conclude that his removal must be an urgent and prime objective, and that under existing conditions, that should be high priority of our covert action. Cable number 3. To station office comment that Lumumba in opposition is almost as dangerous as in office, the Congolese politician indicated, understood, and implied might physically eliminate Lumumba. Cable number 4. Lumumba talents and dynamism appear overriding factor in reestablishing his position each time it seems half lost. In other words, each time Lumumba has opportunity, have last words, he can sway events to his advantage. Cable number 5. Joe should approximately on the 27th of September will announce himself as Joe from Paris. It is urgent you should see Joe soon as possible after he phones you. He will fully identify himself and explain his assignment to you. Cable wire number 6. You and colleague Schneider understand we cannot read over your shoulder as you plan and assess opportunities. Our primary concern must be concealment, American role, unless understanding opportunity emerges, which makes calculated risk first-class bet. Ready to entertain any serious proposals you make based on high regard both your professional judgments. Cable number 7. We wish give every possible support in eliminating Lumumba from any possibility resuming governmental position, or if he fails in Leopold, setting himself up in Stanleyville or elsewhere. Here is the testimony given by a CIA agent to the Church Committee in 1975. Bronson tweeted, Chief of the African Division CIA testimony given under oath to Church Committee, October 9th, 1975. Joseph Snyder, Special Assistant to the DDP Bureau for Scientific Matters testimony given under oath to the Church Committee, October 7th and 9th of 1975. Victor Hedgeman, CIA officer, and Leopold testimony given oath to the Church Committee, August 21st, 1975. The New York Times article published on 9/16/75 found the archives for purchase. Now, anybody want to go get the primary, like I said below, is found in their archives for purchase. Here you have senators here. CIA sent a poison to kill Lumumba. So the CIA was plotting in those wiretaps to assassinate Lumumba via poison. Okay? I'm going to pause the video If anybody want to screenshot this article right here. Here's testimony number 1. What Mr. Richard Bezel, DDP, Deputy Director of Plans and Head of Operations for the CIA, was saying to me shortly before or shortly after Dole's telegram on the 26th and 1960 of August was that there was an policy agreement in Washington that Lumumba must be removed from the position of control and influence in the Congo. And his conversations with me was to initiate correspondence with the station for them to explore with headquarters the possibility of assassination or indeed any other means of removing Lumumba from power, to have stations start reviewing possibility assets and discussing them with the headquarters in detail in the same way we would with any operation. Testimony number 2. Bezel told him in late summer of early fall 1960 that he, Bezel, had direction from the highest authority for getting into the kind of operation. Snyder stated that the reference to highest authority by Bezel signified to mean that he meant the president. After the meeting, Schneider reviewed a list of biological materials available at the Army Chemical Corps installation at Fort Detrick, Maryland, that would produce diseases that would either kill the individual or incapacitate him so severely that he would be out of action. Schneider selected one material from the list, which was supposed to produce a disease that was indigenous to that area of Africa and that could be fatal. We had to get it bottled and packaged in a way that it could pass for something else, and I needed to have a second material that could absolutely inactivate it in the case that it was what I desired to do for some contingency. Okay, so in testimony number 2, they create the disease, they package the disease, and then they create something that could subsidize the disease in case they needed it in favor of Lumumba turning around and doing something that they needed him to do. Okay, the plot. Testimony 2 continued. Schneider also prepared a packet of accessory materials such as hypodermic needles, rubber gloves, and gauze masks that would be used in handling of this pretty dangerous material. Tweedy and his deputy asked Schneider to take the toxic materials to Congo and deliver instructions from the headquarters to the station officer to mount an operation, if he could do it securely, to either seriously incapacitate or eliminate Lumumba. Testimony 3 is a question and answer. So I hope you guys can follow me, as the question will be asked by the Congress, and then we'll get the answers from Hedgeman, who was in the communication wires and on the grounds. Hedgeman, it is my recollection that he, Schneider, advised me or my instructions were to eliminate Lumumba. By eliminate, do you mean assassinate? Hedgeman, yes, I would say that was my understanding of the primary means. I don't think it was probably eliminate to that if there was some other way of removing him from a position of political threat. Hedgeman said that the means of assassination was not restricted to the use of toxic material provided by Schneider. He testified that he may have suggested shooting Lumumba to Schneider as an alternate to poisoning. Hedgeman, I must have pointed out that this was not commonly or usual agency tactic. Never in my training or previous work in the agency had I ever heard any references to such methods. And it is my recollection I asked of whose authority these instructions was issued. The New York Times article, which was published again, and I'm going to go back to it in referring to what it was saying on the article. Joe arrived a week later. He proved to be the CIA's top scientist, and he came equipped with a kit containing an exotic poison designed to produce a fatal disease indigenous to the area. This lethal substance, he informed the station chief, was meant for Prince Lumumba, the recently ousted pro-Soviet prime minister of the Congo, who had a good chance of returning to power. The poison, the scientist said, was somehow to be slipped into Lumumba's food or perhaps into his toothpaste. Poison was not the only acceptable method, and any form of assassination would do, so long as it could not be traced back to the United States government. pointed out the assassination was not exactly a common CIA tactic. The station chief asked who had authorized the assignment. The scientist indicated that the order had come from the highest authority, from Dwight D. Eisenhower, President of the United States. Testimony 3. And what did Mr. Snyder reply? Hedgeman replies, it is my recollection that he identified the president, and I cannot recall whether he said the president or whether he identified him by name. Hedgeman, I doubt that I thought the president had said, you use this system. But my understanding is that the president had made a decision that an act should take place, but then put that into the hands of the agency to carry out the decision, his decision. Question, whatever that act was to be, it was clearly to be assassination or to death of the foreign political leader. Hedgeman answers yes. Hedgeman then says, I look upon the agency as an executive arm of the presidency. Therefore, I suppose I thought that it was an order issued in due form from an authorized authority. On the other hand, I looked at it as a kind of operation that I could do without, that I thought that probably the agency and the U.S. government could get along without. I didn't regard Lumumba as the kind of person who was going to bring on World War III. I might have had a somewhat different attitude if I thought that one man could bring on World War III and result in the deaths of millions of people or something. But I didn't see him in that light. I saw him as a danger to the political position of the United States in Africa, but nothing more than that.
Patrice Lumumba comes back to Leopoldville a prisoner. The former Congo premier, who was captured when he fled inland, no longer wears the tuft of whiskers on his chin that helped to identify him. His arrest provoked several clashes between Lumumba followers and Congolese army troops. But Congo's strongman, Colonel Joseph Mobutu, shown as he watches Lumumba arrive, says he is prepared to put down any uprising. At the same time, the Soviet Union has been demanding Lumumba's release and immediate talks at the United Nations. Mobutu enjoys the sight of Lumumba being tied up more firmly for transfer to the garrison town of Teesville. A soldier tries to stuff into Lumumba's mouth a crumpled speech asserting his claim to power. The former premier shows no emotion. It may be the end of a chapter, but not yet the end of the Congo story.
In November 1960, Patrice Lumumba was arrested by soldiers loyal to then Colonel Mobutu, later the dictator of Zaire for nearly 40 years. Mobutu Sese Seko, and in January 1961 were secretly handed over, along with two members of his cabinet, Maurice Mpolo and Joseph Okito, to Morse Shambe, and flown to Katinga. Lumumba and his companions were never seen again alive. The Katingans officially announced his death on February 13, 1961. Before he was handed over to Shambe, Lumumba wrote a letter to his wife, not knowing whether or not she would receive it. This is the letter to his wife. Bear with me. I'm going to try to get through this for y'all. I write you these words, not knowing whether you will receive them. When you receive them, and whether I will still be alive when you read them. Throughout my struggle for the independence of my country, I have never doubted for a single instant that the sacred cause to which my comrades and I have dedicated our entire lives will triumph in the end. But what we wanted for our country, its right to an honorable life, to perfect dignity, to independence with no restrictions, was never wanted by Belgium colonialism and its Western allies who found direct and indirect, intentional and unintentional support among certain high officials of the United Nations, that body in which we placed all our trust when we call on it for help. They have corrupted some of our countrymen. They have bought others. They have done their part to distort the truth and defile our independence. What else can I say? That whether dead or alive, free or in prison by order of the colonialists, it is not my person that is important. What is important is Congo, our poor people whose independence has been turned into a cage, with people looking at us from outside the bars, sometimes with charitable compassion, sometimes with glee and delight. But my faith will remain unshakable. I know and feel in my very heart of hearts that sooner or later my people will rid themselves of all their enemies, foreign and domestic. that they will rise up as one to say no to the shame and degradation of colonialism and regain their dignity in pure light of day. We are not alone. Africa, Asia, and the free and liberated people in every corner of the globe will remain at the side of the millions of Congolese who will not abandon the struggle until the day when there will be no more colonizers and no more of their mercenaries in our country. So you missionaries and you colonizers need to get out of Africa. I want my children, whom I leave behind and perhaps will never see again, to be told that the future of the Congo is beautiful and that their country expects them, as it expects every Congolese, to fulfill their sacred task of rebuilding our independence, our sovereignty, for without justice there is no dignity, and without independence there are no free men. Neither brutal assaults, nor cruel mistreatment, nor torture have ever led me to beg for mercy, for I prefer to die with my head held high, unshakable faith, and the greatest confidence in the destiny of my country, rather than live in slavery and contempt for sacred principles. History will one day have its say. It will not be the history taught in the United Nations, Washington, Paris, or Brussels. However, but with the history taught in the countries that have rid themselves of colonialism and its puppets, Africa will write its own history, and both north of and south of the Sahara, it will be a history full of glory and dignity. Do not weep for me, my companion. I know that my country, now suffering so much, will be able to defend its independence and freedom. Long live the Congo. Long live Africa. Patrice. The final hours of Patrice Lumumba, Maurice Mpolo, and Joseph Okitu in 1961. The details of Lumumba, Mpolo's, and Okitu's last hours alone remain a secret, especially so long as Mobutu remained dictator of Zaire, and that remaining the case until the end of 1997. The fullest story to date was published in 1999 by Belgian author Ludo de Witt. His research was exhaustive and his story compelling. 10 p.m., January 17th, in 1961 Katanga, the prisoners was taken out of the car. They were barefoot and dressed only in their trousers and vest. This is speaking as the Commissioner Franz Verschoor, Belgian advisor of the Katanga police, removed the handcuffs. He was walking behind Lumumba, who asked him, "You're going to kill us, aren't you?" To which Verschoor simply answered yes. According to Verschoor, Lumumba took very well the announcement of his imminent death. The prisoners stood on the path, surrounded by the policemen and soldiers. Verschoor said they were still on their feet, implying that they bore the marks of a previous few hours beating. Verschoor told them they were going to be shot. According to Captain Julian Gotts, Belgian military police, they were given time to prepare to pray. Verschoor said that Lumumba rejected the offer. Meanwhile, the first firing squad of the 2 soldiers and the 2 policemen got ready. The police had vigorous sting guns. The 3 Belgian soldiers fired rifles. Someone apparently intoned a native oath. Verschoor took Joseph Okitu to a tree. According to Verschoor, Okitu said, "I want my wife and children in Leopold to be taken care of." Somebody answered, "We're in Katanga, not in Leo." Okitu leaned against the tree, his face turned towards the firing squad already in position 4 meters away. A short hail of bullets, and a former vice president of the Senate was dead. His body was immediately thrown into a grave. After the little one, it was the turn of the big one, as Verschoor said later. The commissioner laced Maurice Mpolo against the tree. A round of bullets from another squad mowed him down. Finally, a 3rd firing squad faced Lumumba. Verschoor, who had taken him to the big tree, later said that Lumumba trembled when he led to the edge of the grave, but mute, completely dazed, his eyes misty. He put up no resistance. An enormous hail of bullets riddled the former prime minister's body. After execution, we picked up a half a kilo of cartridges. The police commissioner said shortly before nightfall on January 18th, a convoy left Elizabethville for the scene of the execution. It was almost dark when Police Commissioner Gerald Sote, Verschoor, and Pierre Sapa and the 9 policemen who took part in the assassination arrived. Exhuming the corpses from the sandy soil, did not take much effort. The bodies were rolled up in mortuary clothes and put in the back of a lorry, not far from Katinga, which is about Kasinga, which is 220 kilometers northeast of Elizabethville. The lorry stopped, and the bodies were interred in a hastily dug grave behind an anthill a few paces from the road. Lumumba, Mpolo, and Akitu were not to stay in their new grave in Katinga for long. A definitive solution was planned over the next 2 days. Early in the afternoon on the 21st of January, 2 Europeans in uniform and a few black assistants left Elizabethville for Katinga in a lorry belonging to the Public Works Department and containing road signs, geometrical instruments, 2 demijohns filled with sulfuric acid, and empty 200-liter patrol barrel and a hacksaw. The equipment was provided by the Public Works Department. They unloaded. Hold on one second, y'all. I want y'all to understand what's going on. So I really got to say this part again. Okay. This is what they were armed with when they left. Okay. And lorry belonging to the Public Works Department and containing road signs. So they had road signs, geometrical instruments to measure whatever that was about, 2 demijohns filled with sulfuric acid. What you think they're gonna use the acid for? And an empty 200-liter patrol barrel and a hacksaw. So they had an empty 200-liter patrol barrel. You can look up what a patrol barrel is and see how big it is, and a hacksaw. The equipment was provided by the Public Works Department. The sulfuric acid came from the Union Minery. On their arrival, they unloaded the road signs and a theodolite to make passerbys think they were doing a land survey. But they could not find the grave and had to stop searching at nightfall. Not until the evening of the next day did they find the grave and start their lugubrious task. The corpses were dug up, cut into pieces with knives and the hacksaw, then thrown into a barrel of sulfuric acid. The operation took hours and only ended the next morning on the 23rd of January. At first, the 2 Belgians wore masks over their mouths, but took them off when they became uncomfortable. Their only protection against the stench was whiskey, so they got drunk. One of the black assistants spilled acid on his foot and burned it badly. They discovered that they did not have enough acid and only burnt part of the bodies. According to Verschure, the skulls were ground up, and the bones and teeth that neither acid nor fire can destroy were scattered on the way back. The same occurred with the ashes. Nothing was left of the 3 nationalist leaders. Nowhere could their remains, even the most minute trace of them, be found.
Students of London University, many of them Africans, made a protest march blaming Belgium for the political murder of Lumumba. His death has unleashed passions as well as a lot of calculated political anger all over the world. Hyde Park is the traditional place for letting off steam. In its way, that is a safety valve. People who are free to talk don't fly to the violence, which is common in many countries. Though outside the Belgian embassy, it was touch and go for a time. The London police were patient beyond praise. When the Security Council debated the Lumumba murder, Secretary General Dag Hammarskjöld encountered Russian demands that he should resign. Dag remained calm. He had the warm support of the Western nations and the firm personal backing of America's new man at UNO, Adlai Stevenson, who said the United Nations must stay in the Congo.
The United States government believes and proudly believes that the single best and only hope of the peoples of the world for peace and security lies in the United Nations. It lies in international cooperation.
This is Patrice Lumumba, 1925 to January 1961. He gave his life for the Congo and all of African people. This is his wife and his children, who are pretty much grown now. These are the sources. You can pause the video and you can screenshot and do what you got to do. As you can see, I was in several different archives, several different periods. So,
How do you think your ancestors got these? You think they paid a fair price? Or did they take it, but they took everything else?
History is a clock that people use to tell their political and cultural time of day. It is also a compass that people use to find themselves on the map of human geography. History tells the people where they have been, what they have been, where they are, and what they are.
Like a warrior. Walk like a warrior. Walk like a warrior. Walk like a warrior. I ain't talking about no hustler. I ain't talking about no gangster. I'm hollering at them soldier. Revolutionary culture. Bang on out.
all right, as I said in the chat, man, we're getting ready to. When Kofi set it up, we're going to go back in. So I do want to appreciate everybody for tuning into this particular show. Stay tuned for the follow-up show, as we are going to discuss some things that we really need to discuss together. So hopefully you guys that tune in today will tune into this particular show. Before we go, because I don't have anything else to actually say behind this. Kofi, you got something you want to say?
Long live Lumba. Ooh, I can't even get it out. Patrice. Long live Patrice. I can't even. I'm on ancestor name, but long living. Yeah. I think that was a great presentation. I kind of missed a little bit. Me trying to do 2 or 3 things at one time. I'm gonna go back and check it out. I hope the people go back that looked at it, go back and check it out again. I listened to most of it. So please go back and look at it again. Tell a friend to tell a friend to tell a friend about it. Please subscribe if you hadn't subscribed to the show. And please tune in to the next show, which probably start in the next 10 minutes. Is the in 2009 is the conscious community, is the so-called conscious community beneficial? That's a question. So it's a discussion that me, brother Any Herit, Shawn, Khalfani, and a few other brothers I have in a few minutes. That's all I have, man. Appreciate y'all for supporting us, man. Appreciate y'all for tuning in and rocking out with my brother today.
All right, man. You can appreciate it. Our Black African. Hit us one more time, Kofi.
Black African power, family. That's it, Shawn?
Yeah, that's it. Let's rock.
All right, well, we'll see y'all back in about 10 or 15 minutes. So come back and join us in about 10 or 15 minutes. Peace, peace, peace.